Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and we have a very exciting day today. This is a day that many of you have been awaiting. This is the day that we finally get to take a look at the very first two of the kind of vintage dinosaurs from Rebor, as we have both the Mesozoic Rhapsody _ Valley, and we also have the Californication _ VHS. Very cool as far as those names, but both look super nice. Obviously sporting that super old school vintage dinosaur style as far as both the different variants of the Tyrannosaurus Rex goes. I am beyond excited to take a look at these, because if you know me, if you're familiar with my channel, you'll know that I am a gigantic fan of vintage dinosaurs, and these look to be two of the nicest vintage dinosaurs that I'll probably ever see in my lifetime, so I cannot wait to break these open and take a look at them. We have some really nice images of the Tyrannosaurs here on the front of the boxes, and then if we actually turn it around, I noticed this when I just pulled them out of the box. There's like a really cool thing here on the back that kind of shows off the different Retrosaurs, and it has kind of like a video game style where it says select player and shows off which dinosaur is contained within, as well as the others that are going to be introduced in the line at some point, all of which honestly look incredible. Each and every one of them have like that perfect vintage dinosaur paint scheme to them, so I cannot wait to get a hold of all of these others as well. But just like with this one, the back of the box for the other one here also sports that same similar type of a look. So let's go ahead, pop these out of the boxes, and take a look at them. So here is our Mesozoic Rhapsody right here, which is obviously a very Charles R. Knight inspired type of a look for this Tyrannosaurus. And then we have the Californication version right here, sporting again a very different but equally beautiful vintage style look, and both look really cool. And you can definitely see that the lower bodies are shared here by these figures. They both have the same lower body sculpts, different paint schemes, but the head and neck area is very different on both. Again, different versions of different vintage dinosaurs that both look super awesome. So I am beyond excited to get a closer look at these guys. So let's just go ahead and do that right now. So we are going to start with the Mesozoic Rhapsody version here. Just like most Rebor figures, you have a tail that comes disconnected, and you can actually barely even notice the seam. It's so well done on this style Rex compared to some of the previous releases from the Rebor line. But as far as the sculpt goes, that is just gorgeous, and I think it really nicely replicates that beautiful Charles R. Knight painting that is very famous, pretty much the epitome of what a vintage Rex looked like at the time that it was created. And I think that on top of Charles R. Knight replicating it perfectly in his painting, I feel like Rebor has replicated it quite beautifully into this figure. And to my knowledge, this is the first time that we've ever actually had a figure that kind of resembled that specific dinosaur, that specific Rex. So that is extremely exciting if you ask me. We've had some beautiful resin models in the past, mostly sculpted by Joe Ladotti, but I believe that's the first time we've actually had like an actual model like this, like a pre-painted, model. I could be wrong, but if there is another one, I am very unfamiliar with it. The detailing here in the head sculpt is just absolutely breathtaking. There's so much really beautiful, very lizard-like scale detail to the face of this Tyrannosaurus. You can also see the nice big nostrils sculpted out there, as well as the ears sculpted out up here. You can see the detail around the eye there is incredibly well done. You also have a really nicely painted eye, kind of like a goldish color with a black pupil. I'm not always a huge fan of the gold type of a look on the eyes of figures, but it actually looks really good on this due to the kind of grayish color of the body. It really pops, I think, quite beautifully on the Rex overall. And one of the things, kind of like the elephant in the room, I would say, as far as this one goes, that I do want to pick up on and mention straight away, is that there is definitely a very drastic difference in the overall coloration between this and the prototype. What we were expecting is definitely not what we got here as far as the coloration goes, but I will say that in hand and in person, it actually looks way better than I initially believed it would, and I feel like this coloration closely matches the actual painting from Charles R. Knight, so this might actually be kind of an improvement in a way. The original paint scheme was kind of like a purplish coloration, almost Valley of Guanji Allosaurus-like, but this is a Tyrannosaurus, so it's not exactly a Guanji model, even though you do see 3 fingers on it. That's just an oversight on the part of Charles R. Knight, I believe, and obviously this is not meant to be an Allosaurus or anything, so the fact that the coloration now I feel like closely matches the actual painting that it's based off of is definitely quite nice. We do have an articulated jaw, but I will say that on this one it doesn't work that well, because as you see I open it and it just slowly closes. It doesn't close all the way. You can see that's about the widest it will stay open, just like on its own, but it can definitely open wider. That's about as wide as it would go, but it definitely closes then when I let it go, which is a little bit of a downside for the figure, but I don't think it takes away from it very much, especially because in the original painting it had its mouth closed, so it's okay by me as far as that goes because it now more closely resembles the actual painting, but you can definitely see that the mouth is a little loose because even when I close it, it kind of pops open a little bit. It was staying shut pretty nicely before, but now it's just kind of popping back open. So it's a little bit loose and doesn't work all that well, but the other one definitely works a little nicer. I did have a minute to mess with it and take a look at it right before I brought it in and put it on camera, so I know that the jaw definitely works nice. Sometimes when you get a figure like this and it has an articulated jaw, sometimes they're a little bit stiff, so I just wanted to kind of open it up and make sure that it wasn't stiff before I put it on camera, but it definitely works nicer than this one. As you move down into the neck region of our Tyrannosaurus, you can see some really nice tensing in the neck right there. Beautiful creasing in the skin, as well as some very nice, very, very vibrant skin texture and scaling to the Tyrannosaurus. You can also see like some hanging skin here in the throat of the Tyrannosaurus, kind of a nice, like a light brown or khaki color here for the underside of the T-Rex. You can also see it run up here to the lower jaw, but also, again, throughout the entire underside of the Rex. Lots and lots of creasing here in the neck region. As we move down further into the body, you can definitely see that the detailing continues to honestly look absolutely gorgeous. You can pick up on the rib cage here in the stomach region of the Rex, as well as lots and lots of creasing down here in the lower part of the stomach as well. You do have those arms that look very reminiscent to the painting, again with the 3 fingers as opposed to 2. You also have some nicely painted nails with a black coloration for the nails, some decent looking muscle definition displayed in the arms, and the arms are actually articulated, so you can move those and put them pretty much wherever you would like. You know, probably in closer to the body is a more natural position, but it's nice to have some articulation with the figure other than the jaw. Definitely works quite nicely as well, and allows you a little bit of difference as far as posing your figure. You can see as we continue to move down the course of this version, you have the hip bone right here, and then some beautiful muscle definition in the thigh. The actual skin detail in the thigh as far as like wrinkling and everything just looks absolutely beautiful. Even down here into the knee here, at like the crease of the knee here and everything, you can see how like the beautiful skin texture just shines as far as the like creasing and bending and stuff all the way out into the kneecap. Beautiful musculature here in the calf as well, and we move down here into the foot. Look at that beautiful foot sculpt. That is an absolutely phenomenal looking Tyrannosaurus foot sculpt with some, again, really nicely painted nails, again with a black. The scale detail is just so vibrant, like it really, really pops on these models. You've got that dew claw here sticking out of the back of the foot, like most old school Tyrannosaurs had. You have, again, some really nice scoots down the course of the toes as well. And then we lead back up here. You could see more really nice skin detail and everything as we lead out the length of the tail. Very nice smooth transitions between the gray and then the kind of like brownish coloration. And I will say that even though primarily the figure is a gray, there are actually some slight hints of a purplish color within, and you almost don't even pick up on it, honestly, until you actually get it into a nice light. This is the first time I'm actually taking notice to that fact, because primarily I've been looking at it here down below the camera, not quite in this really nice light. I had it out of the light, and it didn't look like it had kind of that purplish tint, but it actually does, and it's just so subtle you almost don't even pick up on it. As you continue to move out the length of the tail, again, lots of creasing going on, beautiful skin texture, really nice curve to the tail, pretty much just like you would expect to see on an old school type of a dinosaur as it's dragging and waving its tail like you always saw it kind of portrayed in most films and stuff. Once you reach out here to the end of the tail, though, you have some ridges that pick up along the back of the tail, and they run out the course of the tail to the really nice tip right there. If we take a look at the opposing side, again, you can see more beautiful detailing within the head sculpt of the Rex, super reptilian-looking Tyrannosaurus head, but even throughout the course of the body, again, look, you can see how like the spinal column is nicely elaborated here along the back of the neck, and again, really, really nice looking tensing within the neck and everything. That beautiful skin detail there in the throat with that kind of hanging skin just looks absolutely incredible. You can continue to move down the course of the body, and it still looks phenomenal no matter where you look at it. You have the arm, again, on this side like we had seen on the previous side, also articulated. Very nice muscle definition displayed in the arm. Again, the nails are nicely painted. And then you can see the rib cage. You could definitely see a lot more of the stomach region on this side compared to the previous side because the leg is kind of pulling back a little bit more so than what we see with the opposing leg stepping forward. So you see a little bit more of like the skin detail here in the stomach region and everything. And you can see how nice and subtle that rib cage is as far as showing up in the sculpt. But also lots and lots of creasing yet again down here. You can also see how the skin is kind of stretching off of the stomach here with that leg right there pulling it. And then again, the really nice leg sculpt back here as we reach into the hip area. You can see the hip bone. You can also make out the spinal column running along the back of the Tyrannosaur. And then as we lead down the length of the leg, you can again see the beautiful muscle definition, really nice skin texture throughout the really nicely sculpted out kneecap. And yet again, that beautiful Tyrannosaurus foot sculpt, just like we had seen on the previous side. The nails are really nice and carefully painted throughout as well. Very, very nice work on the part of Rebor. And then you come back up here, you run out the length of the tail, and again, it looks pretty much just like it did on the previous side, sporting just unreasonable amounts of really nice detail, as well as those ridges out here at the end of the tail. The underside of the Rex also looks fantastic. Even the underside of the feet is really, really highly detailed. And then on top of having that really nice brownish, kind of like a khaki type of a color here, for the underside, you can see that there's a really nice dark wash that's been included so that all of that detail pops, but also just gives the dinosaur kind of like that dirty old school type of a look. So I think that is absolutely beautiful as well. Again, really capping off the vintage feel, and you can see how much really, really nice looking detail here is on the underside of the Tyrannosaurus. So this is an absolutely gorgeous looking model, even though it doesn't perfectly match up to the prototype, which most companies usually never release figures that look exactly like the prototype. If you're a collector as long as I am, you definitely are well aware of that coming into it. But even though the tones of color in general are quite far off from the original, I actually feel like it looks beautiful regardless. And then we have the Californication version, which is quite different as far as the head sculpt in a few different areas compared to the initial one. And you can see again that the actual detailing on this one is beautiful, and you can see how nice that dark wash is applied on this one, making sure each and every one of those scales, especially down here in the lower jaw, you can really see it, how nice they all pop and just look so nice because that nice dark wash is just creeping in all of the different scales here of the Rex. It just looks fantastic. Same deal up here on the top of the head. Again, it looks really, really beautiful as far as the paintwork goes. Really nice tones of green. Again, very vintage lizard-like tones of green included throughout. And you can actually see like some nice light dry brushings of almost like some yellows on the head sculpt of this one so that it highlights the scales a little bit nicer and also includes some color variation, which helps to give it a bit of a more realistic look. The nostrils and the ears are also sculpted out and painted. They're kind of highlighted with a nice darker coloration to help you take note of them. You can see the eyes are painted beautifully with a red and given a black pupil. There's also a darker coloration like a black that borders around the eye to help highlight the eyes as well. And I love the usage of the red coloration for the eyes of this Rex because when I was a kid and every time I would like draw a Tyrannosaurus and color it with like some crayons or something, I'd always give it the red eye because I always felt like that's how Tyrannosaurus was portrayed, just as like a big, evil, mean dinosaur. He never meant any good. He always wanted to do harm to others, and of course to show that we would always have those mean, evil looking red eyes. So that's really cool that Rebor has actually captured that here on this version, and it looks beautiful the way it's applied, given a really nice, very realistic gloss coat. And just like with the other one, as far as the mouth goes, you can see the teeth are beautifully sculpted and beautifully brought to life with that kind of like translucent type of a look, which they are very good at, and obviously are one of the leaders as far as realism goes when it comes to the insides of the mouths of their figures, and you can see that straight away with the teeth of this Rex. They absolutely look like real animals' teeth. Very, very nice looking. And then I did state that the articulated jaw works a lot smoother on this one compared to the previous one, and that definitely can be seen here now as I'm operating it. You can see that I can pretty much open it to different distances, and for the most part it works really quite nicely. We also have a very nice realistic tone of color for the inside of the mouth, really nice detailing there on the skin flap of the inside of the mouth, as well as the tongue. You can see the tongue is sculpted beautifully, giving a very, very realistic appearance. And then, of course, we also have a really nice gloss coat on the inside of the mouth everywhere, so it has a really nice, realistic kind of saliva-like look in there. And you can see the teeth of the lower jaw are also really beautifully sculpted as well, and everything inside the mouth just screams realism, if you ask me. Just incredible work all around in that area of our Tyrannosaurus. And then as we move down into the neck region, you can see again that the neck as well is quite different compared to the previous Rex. It's not just the head sculpt specifically, as the neck also quite differs, especially when it comes to like the appearance to the skin and everything. There's less of like a hanging skin type of an effect. And if I actually bring the other one up here and then kind of display them together, you can now really see how different the neck and everything is in comparison to each other. Very different appearance as far as like the throat region and the detailing in general compared to the previous Rex, but it looks beautiful as far as a detailing standpoint goes throughout. Really nice sculpting here of kind of like the throat area and everything moving down into the body of the Rex. And there's a very nice dark wash included with this Rex as well, which helps all of the detail just pop so nicely. The only other area that's really different compared to the previous Rex would be the arms, as now we have 2 fingers as opposed to 3. The arms are also articulated on this. They're also kind of in a different position as they're bent a little bit more so than what we saw on the previous Rex. You can see the nails are painted with kind of like an off-white or like a light gray, but they look super nice. And again, the addition of having articulation in the arms is definitely really quite cool. Throughout the Rex, though, the rest of the body I feel like is pretty much the same thing, or definitely appears to be. And if there are any differences, it's very subtle to the point where I don't really notice it. For the underside here, you can kind of see like a yellowish coloration, and ever so different, slight shade of coloration, as we have primarily like a nice green, but kind of have like that yellowish coloration that sort of dry brushes over, while here on the underside, that yellowish coloration is like the primary color here, and you can again see how that dark wash pops throughout. Really cool looking. And then you can see the nails of the feet are once again painted with that kind of like an off-white coloration, and then there's not really too much difference other than that as far as the sculpt or anything. We have a nice black coloration that runs along the spinal column of the T-Rex all the way up the course of the body, but ends right here before you actually reach the head. Beautiful scale detail up there on the top of the head as well. But again, it just honestly looks incredible. As far as a vintage Tyrannosaurus goes, this is perfection, if you ask me. And I just think I did not show the inside of the mouth of this one. So to show you the inside of the mouth, again, we have the really nicely sculpted teeth, again with that really nice translucent type of a look. You can see the tongue and everything is just phenomenal inside. The gums and everything are really nicely displayed, painted with a very nice realistic coloration, and appear to kind of have like a reddish wash in there as well. And then of course that beautiful gloss coat that just makes everything pop. You can even see the gums up there. Super awesome. Of course this version actually has lips, whereas this version does not. You can see it does not have lips, but both are absolutely beautiful releases from Rebor, and I am so psyched to now have these. And for one really cool epic battle, you can see the 2 different variants of the Tyrannosaurus here kind of facing off with one another. Could potentially create one of the coolest dioramas as far as old school dinosaurs go, but they definitely look super neat next to each other. But as far as a size goes for our figures, if we move Californication out of the way and we just take a look at the Mesozoic Rhapsody, for a length from the tail, if we go right up here to the head, you're looking at roughly about 13.25 inches, I would say, or about the 33.5 centimeter mark. And then for a height to the top of the head, pretty much about 8 inches or 20 centimeters, almost on the dot. And then for our Californication version, as I knock some stuff over here off to the side, from the tail to the head, you're looking at about 13 inches or 33 centimeters, so slightly smaller in length than the other one, and then about 7.75 inches or 19.5 centimeters, closing in on about the 8 inch or 20 centimeter range. So very similar in size, but the Californication version is just a little bit shorter and a little bit smaller in the length department compared to the initial version, the Mesozoic Rhapsody version. And for a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon in comparison to our Rebor Retrosaur figures, and you can without question see that they sport a very impressive size. Like most Rebor Tyrannosaurus figures usually do, they are really quite taller than Mr. Papo Rex and easily are larger than the other two Mattel figures here shown within this image, but definitely, again, hopefully showing off the fact that these do sport a very impressive size. And then for another comparison, we have the Joe Ladotti Charles R. Knight resin model of that Tyrannosaurus in comparison to both of the vintage Tyrannosaurs, the Retrosaurs here from Rebor. Just wanted to show you these guys for like a comparison, but the real comparison here, if we get Californication out of the way here, so you can really see how similar both are and get a good idea, I think, of the similarities within the sculpt. You can see they did a really good job, both of them, of capturing that beautiful look of that Tyrannosaurus from Charles R. Knight. Very, very similar sculpts. The nostrils look like they're like the same size. The ears are similarly sculpted, even getting down to this really large scale that you see here on the lower jaw of the Rex, as well as, of course, that kind of like hanging skin in the throat you can see on both of them. Really, really beautiful, very faithful reconstructions of that Charles R. Knight painting, and I think both are fantastic models no matter which way you go. One way or another, both of these are great looking interpretations of that Charles R. Knight painting. So these Rebor Retrosaur Tyrannosaurus Rex models are definitely two of my most anticipated releases from Rebor in a very long time, and definitely two of the nicest releases from Rebor in a very long time, especially if you're a fan of vintage dinosaurs like I am. Like, if you don't like vintage dinosaurs, these probably are not going to appeal to you too much. But if you're around my age and you grew up with that kind of lumbering, evil-looking lizard-like versions of tyrannosaurs, where they drag their tails on the ground, walk in a tripod stance upright, and just want to wreak havoc and cause mayhem, then you're definitely going to like both of these figures, because they are pretty much the most perfect spot-on interpretations of that look of Tyrannosaurus. The sculpts of both of these Tyrannosaurs are extremely highly detailed. On top of having, that really nice vintage look as far as the overall appearance goes, when you get nice and close and take in the fine detail, they are honestly jaw-dropping as far as a detailing standpoint goes. Rebor managed to include every little ounce of detail that you would expect to see and find on these dinosaurs for the positioning of the body, and just in general, like the texturing to the skin and everything. It's just beautifully sculpted out on each and every one of them. Potentially two of the most highly detailed Rebor models that I've ever seen. The paint application of both, I will say, definitely differs from the original versions seen in the prototypes, but I am actually really quite happy with what I have here in person, in hand. I think they both honestly look beautiful. The greenish version, the Californication version, is just incredible looking. Green is, of course, something that you always kind of associate with vintage dinosaurs, because they were most often portrayed in, of course, darker, kind of ugly colors. And that is pretty much exactly what you see here on the greenish version, the Californication version. I feel like they chose the tones of color perfectly on this Rex and have applied it beautifully throughout the course of the entire model. And then, of course, including that really nice dark wash throughout really makes all of the detail pop, and at the same time kind of gives it that dirty-like appearance that you expect to see on those older vintage-style dinosaur reconstructions. So I feel like they did a great job on that. Of course, even including elements of realism like gloss coats on the eyes and in the mouth, and it's just overall a picture-perfect version of an old-school Rex. And then you, of course, have the Mesozoic Rhapsody version, which is also quite beautiful. Really, really nice looking sculpt on that one as well. But the paintwork is, again, quite different from the initial prototype images, as that one had a lot more of kind of like a darker purplish type of a look. However, this one here has more of like a light gray look in hand, but like I had stated earlier, it kind of more so resembles the painting of the Charles R. Knight version more than the initial paint scheme did, because the initial paint scheme had more of like a Guanji type of look, and that may have been the inspiration for that paint scheme, but I feel like this paint application here with the kind of grayish coloration definitely looks closer to the actual painting from Charles R. Knight, so I do actually quite like it a lot more in hand than I was expecting to, because I had seen images of it prior that some people had posted as far as the actual final paint application goes, and initially I was a little let down by it because I was actually quite looking forward to that purplish coloration until someone in the comments of my news video had pointed out the fact that it more closely now resembles the painting from Charles R. Knight, and then actually looking at it I really took notice to that fact and appreciated the final product a lot more so because of that. But anybody that's actually, you know, a big fan of that purplish coloration, it does still have that purplish tint to it because primarily the body is like a grayish coloration, but it has like some really nice purplish tones applied to it, almost like dry brushed over the majority of the body, which you'll really be able to pick out and notice when you see it in a really nice bright light. It's actually so subtle, but really quite nice looking on the final product. And of course, this one again sports that kind of dark wash that makes the detail pop quite beautifully, also giving it kind of that ugly, dirty, sort of an old school type of a look, which looks very, very cool on this one as well. And then you also have articulated jaws and articulated arms on both, so that you have a little extra ability as far as posability goes, and you've got yourself two fantastic vintage Tyrannosaurs from Rebor. So if you are interested in picking these up, both are right now available on everythingdinosaur.com. And if you know me, you know I love Everything Dinosaur, one of the leading dinosaur figure retailers worldwide, so an absolutely awesome place to head on over and pick some of these up. So make sure if you are interested, you head to the links that I will include in the description straight to everythingdinosaur.com, where I purchased both of these, and you can purchase both as well. So make sure you check the links in the description, head on over to Everything Dinosaur and pick up these fantastic Retrosaurs, and make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.